know how to do good engineering. So I just threw up a website. It said, we do tech consulting, contact us. That's it. We started taking in a lot of customers. And I built a small team. And in first 3 months, we secured $300,000 in contracts. I feel that as a first-time founder, it's extremely, extremely important to realize that you should not innovate. It's very counterintuitive advice. When you're building in India and selling in US, that's a great thing to do, right?
Like because you have the arbitrage, you earn in dollars, spend in rupees.
Exactly. You have the arbitrage, and also it's a proven market. Copy 70%, innovate on the 25-30% space that you have. If you go for innovating 70-80%, it's not going to work. It's a mess. It's not a wise business decision. If I was like, "Kaise nahi hoga yaar? Karenge, mehnat karenge, I'll work." I used to say things like, I'll work 25 hours a day. When I started my journey, I was living in a co-working space. I was broke. I was crashing in nothing, and it was really hard. I got tuberculosis.
रितेश सर ने बताया था आप रात भर रहते थे और रात भर रहना अलाउड नहीं था. एक दिन वो सुबह 4 बजे आके आपको उठाते. What's the story then?
No, I think I didn't know. So, I didn't know Ritesh Bhai is founder of Innovate. He was doing YC. So वो वापस आए थे from SF, and I was just sleeping there. I was brainstorming and stuff like that. And I was just imagining, I was working on different companies कि यार क्या कर सकते हैं. And then one of the ideas I came up with was कि यार co-working space करते हैं, right? And I started making notes. कैसा होना चाहिए co-working space, right? So I looked at my competitors, and then I created a list of things which are not good. List of things that are good. List of things that are not good. So he came at night, and I think I just slept on the table or something. He woke me up, and we started having a conversation about different things. Then he told me he's from Innovate. Then I think somehow went to a point where I had my notes in front of me, and we started discussing each and every point which were not good at Innovate. Later I realized that
he's the founder of Innovate.
Ritesh Bhai is the founder of Innovate, but he's so humble that he spent the entire 1 hour going over a lot of those points. I'm pretty sure he thought most of the points were, may not make sense, but some of them definitely did. So next day he called me home, and we ended up brainstorming there and stuff like that. But that's how we met.
Wow. And then I believe that he invited you to stay at his home for a long time. Is that
yes.
true?
And he's so sweet because, I think once we started brainstorming and things like that, then he took me in. We had like a small hacker house at his home. We used to live there, work all night, and it was just like a beautiful phase of life where, I just wanted to work all the time I'm awake, right? And I absolutely enjoyed doing that. So I'd found like my safe space, and I had all my favorite things to do. We had like so many books there. बहुत सारी शांति थी and stuff like that.
Tell us, how was it running 7-8 businesses, failing at them, and then starting Pesto? What were the problems that you faced? What were the learnings you had from all those 7-8 failed ventures? Tell us about it.
I think so when I look back at it, I feel like I was a ball of energy in space.
Uranium 235?
Just a ball of energy in space, trying to, bounce off different things, do random things, and come up with different ideas. And I was good at product design, and I did a little bit of engineering as well. So I could build things, right? So I went through that entire phase where you think that, okay, building a product, customers will come, then you start learning business fundamentals, so on and so forth, right? But if I look back at things, I feel I was just a ball of energy, right? And I ended up like failing in a bunch of things. And if I think about it, I feel if I had to recommend or do that journey again, I would want to do it in a bit more structured manner, right? Like I didn't go to school. Like when I say a ball of energy, I could not tolerate I didn't have the patience to think that I'll be in college for 4 years. Like the whole idea of being in college, then confined for 4 years, I was like, can't do it, right? So I was really, really mad about doing things. I wanted everything right now, and So I started building a lot of things, did a lot of experiments. As a young person, I made money as well, right? Like good money at that time. I used to do consulting work for customers in UK and stuff, and you make money in dollars and you're like, okay, this is really good money, right? So I knew how to make money, and then I would end up making money every time and then end up losing it on whatever venture I was trying to build. But if I look back again, I feel that as a first-time founder, it's extremely, extremely important to realize that you should not innovate.
Okay.
It's very counterintuitive advice, right? I was in my head trying to innovate, come up with something new. I had gone through all the materials of YC, read up Paul Graham's essays and everything else, right? But I think as a young person, when you're trying to build something, figuring out what to build is a very, very big experiment, right? Like your journey from 0 to 1, right, to PMF is a big experiment, right? As that experiment is happening, you say that, okay, I have another experiment that is going to come in, which is learning how to build any business, right? चपरी चलाना नहीं आता यार आपको
और आप ऐसी चीज के बारे में सोच रहे हो जो किसी ने आज तक नहीं करी है.
Exactly. It's very difficult, right? So I'm not saying, it's probably if I talk to that 18, 19-year-old Ayush, he won't listen to me.
He was so rebellious.
Yes, I was extremely. It's not that I didn't have people tell me that, but it's more of me reflecting back and yeah. So I think यार ये जो overlapping things and I was like कैसे नहीं होगा यार करेंगे मेहनत करेंगे. I'll work. I used to say things like I'll work 25 hours a day. कैसे नहीं होगा. But I feel कि यार those two experiments. There's a beautiful essay by Andrew Chen, right, who is managing director of A16Z. He wrote an essay, why you should not innovate, and I really, really resonated with it.
It's a book also, I believe.
I'm not sure. I've read his essay. I'm not sure if there's a book on this exact thing. But the concept is very simple कि यार जब आप एक धंधा बना रहे हो, तो figure out करना कि वो धंधा क्या है, and learning how to build any business, manage people, do this. You can always learn on the way, but I feel कि यार variables बढ़ जाते हैं. Right? So I feel if you're young, you're a first-time founder, दुनिया का सारा बोझ आपके कंधों पर नहीं है. Or at least I'm not smart enough. Maybe there are people who are incredibly smart and they can do it as well. But I feel that looking at businesses which exist, looking at space industries which exist, and building in those industries which are proven is something which I would do, because this experiment of learning how to build a business in itself is a huge thing. So I think, I would not take that journey from 0 to 1, finding PMF. I would try to borrow PMF. Maybe 70% things I would look at things which are proven in existing markets. 30% I'll try to innovate, right? So copy 70%, innovate on the 25-30% space that you have. If you go for innovating 70-80%, it's not going to work. It's a mess. It's not a wise business decision. If you're a scientist, great, you have to do that, right? But I think business backwards, I feel कि यार ecosystem में a lot of times we look at things negatively, right? कि यार ये तो US का X है कि US में चल गया तो इंडिया में चलेगा या नहीं चलेगा and stuff like that, right? At least I can talk about SaaS space or software as a service industry and some spaces like that. When you're building in India and selling in US, that's a great thing to do, right? Like
because you have the arbitrage, you earn in dollar, spend in rupees. Exactly.
You have the arbitrage and also it's a proven market, right? Like, so when you're doing that, then I think borrowing things which have already worked, there is absolutely nothing wrong with it, especially for first-time founders.
Okay. So let's double click on how do you borrow a PMF? So for people who are in college, they want to build something, they're crazy, full of energy. How should they borrow a PMF?
Look at things which are working. So I think like there are two things. Number one, I think I would try to understand what markets exist. There are two ways to go about it. Just look at the list of Fortune 500 companies. Where are they? What are they doing? And what are the companies that are huge, but their product sucks, right? And there are plenty of them, believe me.
Give us some example.
I won't want to name drop companies, but there are a lot of companies who I feel कि यार ये shitty product है, 20 साल पहले बना था. captured the market, and then वो हाथी बन चुके हैं. उनके लिए move करना बहुत difficult है. There's a lot of bureaucracy, right? They can't dance, right? And as a small company, that's the advantage you have, right? You can move quickly, you can adapt to the market. The AI is going to bring in so many changes. When there are enterprise customers, they have a lot to lose. So if you have to implement AI in a large company, there's a committee. कि यार data leak तो नहीं होगा, ये तो नहीं होगा, वो तो नहीं होगा, because there are a lot of potential screw ups which can happen because of which your existing business might. You're okay with that going down slowly. You're like, okay, fix kar lenge, right? But
not able to, touch the thing which is working.
Exactly. Like security is a big thing. For example, a large bank, right? Data security is huge for them. If there is something which gets messed up, their market cap is going to get. So I think they have a lot to lose, right? So small companies have a huge advantage there, right? So I think looking at large companies with shitty products but insane market cap is one great signal. The second one is interviewing people to look at what problems exist and they have products for solving that. And those products are growing, but they're not good enough. And then the third way is to just look at all the companies that are doing well, look at companies which have really good momentum, right? Like one of my favorite companies these days in sales tech space is Scratchpad, right? It's an amazing product, right? Like Salesforce interface is not that great, not too happy with it. Scratchpad is a layer built on top of Salesforce.
Okay.
That's it. And I would pay for it any day because my sales efficiency increases, right? There are a lot of products that are doing well. And I think like doing some research there, spending time in figuring out what are established markets and coming up with a, superior product. Potentially at a better price, but I'm not a big fan of pricing things cheaper, but having a higher quality product. So if you have that, that's like a good way to go about it.
So this was the first thing that especially the young founders, first-time founders should look for. Problems, value number one, learning number one, do not try to innovate. Try to, borrow a PMF, things which are not working well, bigger, larger TAM, and then try to, 30% innovation, 70% copying that.
Correct.
What's the second thing which you believe that, you did wrong, but later after 7 or 8 businesses failed and Pesto being born, from the hindsight you feel, ये change करना चाहिए था, ये नहीं करना चाहिए था. What was the second learning?
बहुत सारी है. But I think engineering and product. I think when you're building, if I have to start a company again, my first 5-10 hires will all be engineers.
Why?
It's a great question. Product. I think if you're building in tech and if you're building, let's say a SaaS company or a marketplace or something like that, right? Then I think like as a software engineer, I would think about a problem in a very pragmatic way. So if I tackle any problem, I'll try to basically solve it for scale, and the feedback loop directly goes back into the product, right? So let's say if we need somebody to do customer support, right? If a software engineer who is working on the product does customer support,
he can take the feedback into customer and then feed it into the system. Unless if it were a sales system, उसको समझ में नहीं आएगा.
Absolutely.
कि वो customer क्या कर रहा है, engineering product क्या है.
Yes. This is one change we made at Pesto 4 months ago. And it's mind-blowing how quick our, cycles.
The customer feedback turns into...
Exactly. I mean, it's sometimes like I did a meeting day before yesterday with somebody, one of the enterprise customers, and he recommended that, if I wish if we had X, right? And in 2 days we had X.
Wow.
I sent him the screenshot and I'm like, this is how it works now. And he's like, wow, this is unreal, right? So I think it's a design problem, right? If you have support, make engineers do support in the beginning. If you have sales,
make engineers do the same.
Exactly. People who are closest to the product should be closest to the customers as well in the beginning, right? When you're in early stages of my CTO right now is interviewing every single developer who gets listed on the platform.
In order to get the freshest consumer insights.
Yes. And our job is to say, this definitely can't scale. Right? So the entire engineering team is working on eliminating him. That how can we make him not do interviews? and I believe that is beautiful, right? Like, so he's closest to the product. We are able to get a lot of insights from there. And I think that the amount of change that is happening in the product is just phenomenal, right? So that's something which is a fresh learning. I would totally do that. And I think like some of the best founders, young founders who end up doing well are also similar, right? Like if you observe, look at the pattern. One of the things I used to do, I would actually highly recommend. This is one of the good things I did. Highly recommend everyone doing it. Pick one founder every single week. Study them.
That's what we do.
Yeah. So study them in depth. What were the things that worked for them? Not just a story, right? Story is like, yes, it's fine. Everybody has their own journey, and a story is a story. Some of it is inspiring, some of it is boring, but it still works. I would prefer to have a boring story and still works because there is less struggle.
Right.
But it's unpopular. The popular one is when you go through struggle and shit like that, and people. It gives a lot of people strength as well to go through hard times, but I think I would prefer to not go through struggle. So yeah, studying founders every week and getting learnings from the journey is something I would do.
Do you do that?
I do that even today, absolutely.
How do you study? Let's break this down. How do you study founders?
So for example, if I'm curious about Stripe, right? I will look at the journey. I'll read everything online which is available. Then I'll start looking at when the journey started, how it happened, etc., etc. I'll start tapping into my network. I'll start looking at people who worked with them. I'll try to do, reach out to people that, hey, this will be confidential. It's only for me, but I'd love to just interview you to get deeper insight into what the early stages of Stripe look like. And you'll be surprised how many people agree to catch up with you. And this is not a podcast, nothing, right? This is just you. This for you. So
the person is very, in a very unthreatening environment.
Exactly.
Very true to you. There is no one recording.
Absolutely.
You're not recording this and putting out.
Yeah.
I'll express all my, this is insightful. What are some amazing questions or some things that you ask which unlocks insights from them? So when you interview a founder,
it's a funny one. So I'll tell you my favorite one.
Okay.
How much money did you have in your bank account when you started the company?
And most people will tell you because no one is recording.
Yes. And I needed that answer, right? Because we look at, so everybody in media looks at the narrative, right? And I get it. Narrative is important, and that's it's the job of founders to come up with that narrative and go with it, right? But I was broke as hell. I could make money, but I just wanted to be focused on building what I was building and stuff like that. And I was going through a lot of struggle, right? But when I started interviewing people, one of the questions I started coming up with, because I was surprised because I did all the research on all of them and it looked like they had their own fair share of struggle and this and that and then they built the company and whatever, right? And it was really inspiring and they did go through struggle, right? But you will be surprised that whenever some of these iconic companies were built, majority of them, like more than 70-75% of the cases, most of those founders had access to capital. Not necessarily capital, but access to capital at a personal level, not as a company, at a personal level. What that does is that it puts you in some sort of, you don't have unnecessary struggles, right? Like when I started my journey, I was living in a co-working space. I was broke. I was crashing in a thing. And it was really hard. I got tuberculosis, right? At some point as well. So I think that struggle is a bit unnecessary. And I feel that that is something I did not know, right? And when I started talking to people, I was surprised by this fact. And I feel this is less talked about because it's not a popular thing. But I think people should know this, that, hey,
certain level of financial safety help
that's
them.
important, right? And you look at anyone, okay, Elon Musk, he did not start, PayPal. Right. It wasn't his first company. He built something, sold it as then built something, then sold it, right? And started having some access to capital and then did something bigger, right? Same is true for most of the founders. I mean, we can name the popular ones because I think some of their stories might be out there, but most of the people had access to capital, right? And not necessarily like building and selling it is important. Some of them had access to family wealth. Now, family wealth is looked at it from a very negative eye, right? But if somebody has access to capital and wants to put it to good use, please do it. It's not a disadvantage, it's an advantage, and it should be looked at it from a neutral perspective, right? Not from a bad eye.
I remember Jeff Bezos raised his first check from his father of 1 million or something.
He also had made a lot of money at that point.
Yeah.
Because he was a very successful, but yeah.
For the first time founders, how to have access to capital? I understand the problem that 70% of the founders made big because they had a certain level of financial safety with them, which they leveraged and built something great, which helped them build something great. And which kept them away from the small struggles of day-to-day life, and they helped them focus on the problem that they are doing. But in India, for the first time founder, people who are in college, how to have that access of capital?
Multiple ways. I mean, so one is go work for someone, right? Like diversify your risk, right? Like, okay, if you want upside and, some salary to make yourself stable, if you're not in a position to take that risk, go for it, right? Like work for a startup, get some skin in the game, get some equity, work for them, get some experience, and there's nothing wrong with it, right? So that's one way to do it, right? Another way could be build a company in the same process, bootstrap it, go sell it if you can, right? A lot of founders did that, and I think that's like another way to get access to capital. The third way is persist. Whatever company you're building, go build it for 6, 7, 10 years, right? At some point when the company is large enough, you will find an exit, right? And maybe if you're able to sustain something for 6, 7, 10 years, maybe you don't need it. Maybe you can, scale this itself, right? And stuff like that. So how to is different for everybody. But I feel that what I'm against is my own journey. What I'm against is I'm grateful to have a lot of experiences. I think it really helped shape me as a person and a lot of learnings. But I feel that I did a lot, right? Like I was living on a burger a day at some point, living in a co-working space, right? Or stuff like that, right? Like a lot of struggle, which I feel I could have avoided because I also used to do consulting, make money, but I just chose not to for some reason. And I feel in hindsight, of course, everything is easier to connect the dots. But yeah, I think that's something which I would highly recommend people.
Wow. So there are a lot of young folks.
Also, working for somebody who really, really inspires you. It's something which I think goes a very long way. Your first job, working for someone who is whose value you really resonate with, goes a very long way.
You did this in your time?
I did this in my time.
Who was the person?
Ritesh Malik, yeah, of course.
What did you work for him, and what exactly did you do, and how did it help?
A lot of different things. A lot of different things. I think just by being around him was a big thing for me because our values resonated, right? Like I worked for a lot of people before that. And I used to go to a lot of people and be like, hey, I'll work for you for free, or I want to really create value. And I did create a lot of value for a lot of people. But it was incredibly hard for me to resonate with them, right? Like I'm from Varanasi and I've grown up being inspired by my father and people around me. And I think the values, the way it matched with Ritesh Bhai never clicked before, right? So when it did click, I was like, okay, I want to really stay around this space, right? So I think that really, really went.
What were those values?
You're a very, very long list, right? But I think it's hard to describe, but the genuineness of being a giver, doing something for the ecosystem and helping others, giving first, thinking about doing things in the most honest and ethical ways, right? I think things like that, it's just endless. I think probably what I'm talking about.
Yes.
But I work with a lot of people from Blaksha. I think somebody from Blaksha works at the company as well. I think Soumya is from Blaksha. And it's amazing. I see similar values in people at Blaksha. So I think that is something which I feel I'm grateful for. People at Blaksha should be grateful for.
True.
And yeah, I think finding someone who you can really resonate with early on in your career really helps shape you as a person, right? So that goes a long way. I spent a lot of time with Uncle Ritesh Bhai's father.
Okay.
His passion, I used to get so inspired by just observing him. So I think finding people who you can really, in early stages of your career, who you really get inspired by goes a very, very long way.
So tell us, what was the deepest insight that you had which led to Pesto? And why the name Pesto? I'm sure that you've been asked.
It was a lot of frustration, right? I think so. After doing this research, I'm in the middle. I'm starting something, and everything is failing every now and then. At some point, I just got frustrated because I was also doing this research where a lot of these founders I realized have access to wealth. And one fine day, I was in SF. I was eating pesto pasta.
Okay.
That's the cheapest thing you can find, and it's also easy to cook. It's ready to make, and so I was cooking that, and I was like, okay, I'm tired of trying to do something because I didn't have expertise in anything, right? Like I was learning everything from first principles. I tried to do something in P2P lending, but as a technical person, but I did not understand lending, right? So I was struggling with these kind of things. At some point, I was like, okay, I'm just going to make money.
Okay.
Right? Let me just do some consulting. So Pesto actually was not anything else, but it was pure tech consulting company. Where I said, I know how to do good engineering. I know a lot of good engineers. I can hire them and I can do just tech consulting, right? So Pesto, I just wanted to do something really badly, wanted to do it now, and wanted to make money. So I just threw up a website. It said, we do tech consulting, contact us. That's it. And we started taking in a lot of customers. And I built a small team, started working with a few people. And in first 3 months, we secured $300,000 in contracts.
And this was from who funded this?
Nobody funded this. This was like completely bootstrap. Yeah.
Wow. Take step back. So because we were talking about first-time founders, there are a lot of college students who want to drop out.
Yeah.
And you dropped out and you're a successful man. Someone who is looking to drop out, what would your advice be? Because there is no art in science, because a lot of people want to drop out, but they don't have access to people who have dropped out and did something big and who have failed multiple times. So what would be your advice to someone who's thinking to drop out?
Yeah, I think my advice would be to think from first principles.
Okay. How do you think from first principles? What to think?
Think about yourself. So I think I'll tell you what is misguiding, right? Misguiding है कि यार what misguides people is, अगर किसी ने drop out किया and they are successful, they are one of 100 people who dropped out and are successful. They are outliers, right? Like, and I feel that outliers get highlighted a lot more. That does not necessarily mean that you should pursue the same path.
Right.
It just means that you can take another path. That there is a path apart from the usual defined
conventional way
as well, right? But I think most people end up making this mistake, like Ritesh's story, right? Like Ritesh from Oyo has had like an amazing dropout story, and I'm sure that there are a bunch of others and a bunch of Thiel fellows and stuff like that, right? So yes, it is true that if you want to do something else, traditional education may not send you in that direction. But I feel at the same time, it's important to recognize that you don't have to live someone else's journey. मैंने ये भी देखा है कि यार बहुत सारे लोगों को ये लगता है कि कोई और बताता है वो मैं भाग रहा था, मैं गड्ढे में गिरा, and then this is how I climbed out of गड्ढा, and it becomes a very inspiring story. And then there are some people जो गड्ढा देख के हंसते हंसते कूद जाते हैं
कि मैं भी गिरूंगा तो मैं भी सक्सेसफुल,
कि मैं भी निकलूंगा. This is stupidity. Don't do the mistakes which happen. The whole point of learning from history is to not repeat those mistakes, right? So I think it's important for us to realize that everyone's journey is different. In fact, right now, what a time it is to be young, to be building in tech, to be coming up with something new. So it is an amazing time to be a young person and to be building in tech here. So
what were some of the biggest challenges that you had building these companies? Because you were very young. You didn't have a college degree. You didn't study MBA. What was some of the biggest challenges, and what were the...
So I'll tell you from both. There are pros and cons both to this, right? Every single thing I came across, I had to learn from first principles, right? Reading books, interviewing people, getting to know them, things which would sound very basic to me today. I used to be so excited about them, right? Oh, how do we build marketing teams? How do we build sales teams? Okay, what is an SDR? What is a BDR? How does account executive work? The entire motion, right? Everything was new and I was trying to learn. There are pros and cons. Pros is when you learn something like that, the depth of understanding that you have is very, very deep because you know the reason behind every single thing. Why? Right. Because you're trying to come up with a lot of times I came up with solutions that, okay, I thought that I ended up coming up with an innovative solution to a problem. And then I'm like, yaar, dunia aise hi chalti hai. Uska bas naam alag hai, right? So it was amazing that I could think about it from first principles and then it exists. So it's nice, right? Like you feel good that, okay, but coming up with that solution took you months. Right? Which you could have just read or somebody would have told you about that, right? The other way to do it is to work for somebody, is to work with someone, is to work with a startup which is growing quickly, is to work, under a mentor you can learn from and you get exposed to all of these things and then you can, start thinking about bigger problems, right? So pros and cons there, right? I think pros ye bhi hai ki yaar, I feel these learnings are with me for life now. A lot of these kind of learnings. The cons is ki time bahut lag gaya. And I've always been impatient.
So then Pesto happened. Tell us about the journey of Pesto. आपको ये insight आया कि there are people working in the West who earn a lot of money, and if you can upskill the people in India, and then you can give align them with the companies who hire in the West remotely.
Correct.
You can have the cost benefit there, the arbitrage there, and then people can really earn well.
Yeah.
What was the business model of Pesto back then, and how it evolved over time? What were your journeys? Yeah. What were your learnings while building Pesto?
Yeah. No, 100%. I think when we started out, I'll tell you the challenges as well, right? When we started out, it was very simple. I had done this tech consulting thing and I finally had some access to capital. And I'll tell you that helped. The moment we made that 300K 3 months, we could think about spending money on productive things, right? I started doing a lot of trips, started traveling, started attending conferences, I started going to Rise in Hong Kong every year, started doing Startup Grind global events and stuff like that, right? And I started investing in myself. One such trip was Startup Grind, and I've always been very close to the Startup Grind community because I used to organize events at Innovate, and this was my way to, get sponsors to sponsor the food. I would refrigerate the food and bootstrap using that. But Startup Grind has been really helpful, right? When I was in US for the global conference, one of the talks was by Balaji, right? And he was speaking on a very specific topic, and everybody, is doing a fireside chat, and they're like, talking about some broad topics, right? Balaji was talking about a very specific thing, how to build a great culture in a remote team. I was like, ye bahut hi specific hai. And I was just curious, kya scene hai? So I went in and I was like, what the hell is a remote team? Like, forget about culture. Remote team kya hai? Ki aapka office nahi hai, aap office hai, but log baat nahi kar sakte dusre se, or, are you remote US only? I had so many questions, right? And Balaji being Balaji, he's like so humble, and he ended up spending some time even off stage afterwards, answered a lot of my stupid questions. So I was grateful for that. But at that time, he was speaking about how to build a remote team and how to build a great culture. And I got exposed to remote work opportunity at that point, right? And he was building earn.com at that time, and earn.com was fully remote. And I came across remote work, and I was like, so if I work remote, I do this, will you pay me same? Maybe. So I went back, started applying to a bunch of companies, and I started telling them, I'll give you a 50% discount. Right? But I'll work from elsewhere. And they were all fine with it. Like, it was so casual, right? And I got fascinated by that, right? Because the reason as a software engineer at that point, making 15 lakhs was a big thing, right? But people were making 70, 80 over a crore in US for entry-level jobs, entry-level
Tech jobs.
Yes. So I think that was quite fascinating. And that's the idea I started pursuing. Two hurdles, right? Number one was it pushed us towards upskilling as well, which originally was never a part. So we would want, ideally, we have good engineers coming to us.
From India, and then we'll supply
and
them
then you
to...
just connect them with companies. It happens, right? But we did not have good engineers come to us, right?
Because of the education problem.
Nobody knew remote work. When I said remote work, it feels like ghar baite 1,000 rupees ghante kamaye. It sounds like
a scammy
one of the WhatsApp scams which you get. So remote work was new. Nobody knew remote work. And good people were not coming to us. And we said that, hey, like, let me educate juniors maybe. And we will teach them for free, right? We'll make money once they get jobs and companies will probably
With
pay
the
us.
income sharing model.
With income sharing model. That did not work out at all, right? But we got pushed into that direction, right? So we started doing that a bunch. How it evolved is we realized during COVID, we had a very, very good, I think, really good people coming to study. But later we realized that was an anomaly. And I won't say good or bad. People are not good or bad. They are senior or junior, right? So we had senior people coming. And when senior people come in, they are also able to get good output from our program, right? Because the platform is built for that kind of audience, right? What we realized is that after the pandemic ended and people got back to office, senior people were not coming in to study. So a lot of juniors were coming to study and teaching. This time we were not offline, we were completely online. Teaching juniors online requires a lot of discipline from their side, which is completely out of your control, and hence the success rate is lower than what it would be offline, right? But we realized that to our surprise, we actually opened the platform 15 days ago to everybody. If you're senior, the platform is created in a way where it's remote first, right? So people look at time zone overlap, people are able to look at your work, your open source contributions, etc., etc. We started seeing a lot of senior people coming in, and we were humbly surprised by it. We were like, okay, maybe the time has come now. So we had people from Amazon, Microsoft, SD2s, right, Atlassian, all of these companies coming in, and it's a very good thing to have, right? So I think that's something which is happening. So we are working with a lot of enterprises now. A lot of companies in US have always been on the platform, but they've always been looking for senior engineers. And now they're coming in. So that's the change which happened. But that's how I got started. I was like, okay, we can work remote from anywhere and make money in dollars. And we don't need a middleman, right? Like we can basically connect them directly and people can work with people and we can keep our margins at 15, 20% instead of 40, 50, 60%, right? If you look at the industry traditionally, there are a lot of middlemen with fat margins. And when they have fat margins, then developers are not getting paid well. And when they're not getting paid well, they're unable to invest in themselves, right? So I think we would want our margins to go down with time as the scale increases. And hopefully with AI, we are able to automate most of it so that it's not operationally heavy for us.
So 3-4 insights that are coming out and I would love to, double click on that.
Yeah.
Number one, you mentioned that smart people didn't want to study. What was the insight behind that?
It's just, I think, so we can basically make assumptions from data, right? Data is that during pandemic, really good people also wanted to study. After the pandemic, probably they are busy or they don't want to. It's just data, right? Like we just see seniors who are not joining the program, right? And that's just data. So I think it's not that they don't probably want to study, but probably they don't need help. People who are self-motivated to do it online,
you don't need courses for them.
And that's true, right? I believe that there's no better way. If you're motivated, you can, any program, right? Like any education program, probably a better way to learn is to learn by yourself. There's enough content out there. The only way programs are helpful is that it gives you a structure and it gives you discipline. There's a lot of accountability attached with it, right? So yeah, that's the thing. And I think we are still running the program at a much smaller scale. Very few people who want to join for the data content and stuff like that. But I think long term, I think I would really want to find a way to make education free. That's like one of my goals. But yeah, I think self-study is the way to go.
What's wrong with the current education system? Because on the system where, you know, people are getting out of the system on the student side, but they are not coming up with those skills that are being paid for. And second problem is that people are entering into this education business and they're thinking this education as a business, and they're you know, taking away, they're thinking how to make money from this. Do you think education should be free? Or how we can...
Education should definitely be affordable, right? And education should be linked, like educators, nobody at Pesto who is teaching is not a full-time engineer. Every single person is a software engineer, senior software engineer at a company who is working, right? Only then they are teaching, right? And they're teaching while practicing, right? I know a lot of people at Plaksha who take sessions are people from the industry. The amount of insights, the kind of insights you can get from there is phenomenal, right? So I think like as a business, I'll talk about it from two different perspectives. What's the ideal case scenario? But ideal, unfortunately, doesn't happen, right? Ideal case scenario is people from the industry teaching, people paying for skills and learning skills, right? People don't pay for education. What people want to pay for is actually degrees or jobs. And you can't pay for jobs. You can only look at jobs as a placement metric of whatever institute, right? But people pay for degrees. So the problem there is that the market is also
aligned in such a way.
Yeah. Or misaligned in such a way that even though it sounds good that, you know, skills, we should invest in skills, we should, you know, do X, Y, Z. But anyone is happily paying 20, 30 lakhs for a degree, for a fancy degree, but they won't pay 3 to 4 lakhs for a good program, right? So I think that's a shift which probably should happen over the next few years, isn't happening right now. And as a business, education business, I'll tell you what's working really well. I don't align with it, so we are not doing it. Pesto started as an offline boot camp. Our numbers were incredible for the offline thing. COVID ended that, and the friction to go back to it is very large, right? Like starting it all over again, it's a very different business altogether, right? Hard for us to do that again, but when we did it offline, the results we had was amazing, right? So I think offline businesses, everybody is becoming a university, and it's sad. I'm not as excited about it. It's most of the edtech companies, even, right, or other companies that are coming in will go the offline route, and they're becoming universities again. And the reason why they're doing that is because then in an offline environment, you're able to give a lot more value and make that change happen, right? Making that change happen completely online requires two-way effort, and the percentage of people who will have success is going to be incredibly low, right? Which is why I'm not excited about that opportunity or that business, right? It's like in single digits, right? So I feel that a lot of offline, universities are going to pop up, and they should probably as well. But I'll tell you the business aspect of it. Let's not name universities, but some of the largest universities, if you do research on them, you will realize that those universities, and that's the business, right? Those universities accept only a handful number of people.
Right.
So I'm a university, I'll say that, okay, I'm going to accept only 200 people and run a program for them. And I'll make sure that there's good amount of selection bias here as well, that education is a two-way street, right? Like it has to come from both sides. So I'll make sure that those people are committed, passionate, intellectually smart, disciplined, and all of that, right? So they're good. And then you have a good program. It's a good match. Those 200 people will have a really, really good outcome. You will have really high output, average packages, reviews, and stuff like that, right? But it'll be only for 200 people. It's not scalable. There's no way it will happen for 20,000 people. Just
because you can't scale and have the same quality.
You just can't, right? Now I'll tell you what the business is. If this is a university, and you can look at the best universities that you can go research on them, they would have this selection bias that, okay, they'll take a few hundred people. All of these people are incredibly successful, and the brand of the university gets built. And what they actually make money from is when these brands end up selling online courses, where they just offer a certificate or a degree.
Because the brand is so strong.
The brand is so strong. And people just pay for those certificates and degrees, and you'll be surprised how many people do, right? I did not want to go that route because I just feel, like there's less impact, or I as a founder am not as excited about that opportunity. But it's an amazing business. And there are hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue which universities are doing. Universities are an amazing business, right? But again, will those people get the same output? Absolutely not. Should they expect that output? Absolutely not. If you're buying an online course, no matter what expectations is being set, just don't go there for the content. You will have to be disciplined, look at what you're getting and buy that content, right? Otherwise it's really, really difficult.
Because you see a lot of online courses like Coursera, the completion rate is worse.
Single digits.
Is in single digits.
Most of the people, the companies that buy Coursera for their own employees, most of them don't end up opening it.
True, very true.
Yeah, it's guilt money that, hey, we are investing XYZ in L&D. But people are not actually using it. But at the same time, people who do use it are able to derive a lot of value from it, because suddenly Coursera is an ocean of
plethora of knowledge. Yeah.
Exactly, which you can get. So as I said, that whenever there is education and online, it's more about the person who's taking it, right? Because believe me, you can do that for free. You can learn anything online for free. You just have to be disciplined and structured. And a lot of these companies provide that discipline and structure, but you can also do it yourself. It's not that you can't do it.
So there is a plethora of, you can access anything on the internet for free.
Yes.
In any industry, in any domain. So what's the need of colleges right now? Do you think the colleges will lose their importance because it's a free market now? If you want to study...
So colleges are still necessary. I'll tell you why. This thought that you can learn anything online and you can be whatever, right? This is there and a lot of people get there. But you know what happens to 99% of people? They don't end up doing it. Because they don't have the discipline. Because they don't have the sincerity. If they did have the sincerity, they don't need anything, right? But it does not happen with everyone, right? Yes, you could, let's say, gym, right? You could go to the gym, right? Every single day, all day, and you could really work out. But then why do trainers exist? Why do personal trainers exist? They provide that discipline, they push you, they do all. Otherwise, PT as a job should not exist, right? Because if you have the discipline, the machines are there, it's the same bloody gym. If you know things, you can also find that on YouTube. But why is personal training as a business exist? Why does that profession exist? Because it provides you that discipline. And just like you need a personal trainer, it's not that you can't do it without it. You can, of course, do it. But just like you need a personal trainer for gym, similarly, universities play that role for you. It provides you the right environment where you can thrive. It provides you the right, you mentioned the library you went to, who sponsored that library, who did this, who did that, you're around people, there's a lot of serendipity which happens, so on and so forth, right? All of those things happens and universities play a long, long role. I started with this narrative that universities are going to die. I think my perspective has changed. Universities are not going to die. They may not scale as a business. They can scale because for some weird reason, I hate it, but degrees sell. People buy degrees. People buy the brand. I hate it, but they do, right? So they will end up making money from there. But yeah, I think that environment makes a huge difference.
आजकल बहुत सारे students जो code लिख रहे हैं, they're copying it from ChatGPT. What's the problem? How are you solving? How can teachers, how can people who are teaching coding can navigate around this fact?
Yeah, if a software developer is not copying, so we started. So let's say Pesto is now open to all. We have software engineers coming in from all sorts, right? And we have different stages of interview. The first stage is a DS round, right? A lot of people copy using ChatGPT or GPT, right? Now, if they don't copy from ChatGPT or use AI to solve their assignments, I will look at that as a negative signal.
Because you're not up
I'll be like, dude, what's wrong with you? Right? I'll tell you what I would look for. what I would look for is, are they able to understand what's going on there? It's like using a calculator. If I gave you a complex problem to solve, are you going to use an abacus to do it, or Vedic maths? Or of course you can, but a faster way, if you have to get shit done, is to use a calculator, right? Similarly, AI is like that even for software engineers, right? What's wrong is not understanding the underlying fundamentals behind it. Today, what I see is that a lot of people, for example, front-end engineers, right? They use frameworks, right? Like React is a framework, and React does a lot of things, right? And there are a lot of smart engineers who solve those problems for them early on. But the problem is they're able to use React to build things, but they don't know what's happening behind it, the concepts behind things which they're using, right? And that's really, really wrong. You need to have an understanding of what's happening behind, because you're not a software engineer to just build things. You're a software engineer to fix things when things break. And if you don't understand what's happening fundamentally behind the framework, you won't be able to do that. Similar is the answer for GPT or ChatGPT, right? If you don't use it, you're not smart. It's stupid not to use it. It's technology. Use it, but don't let it handicap you.
How to ensure that? So there are two problems. Number one, you're saying people, the software engineers who are not using GPT, you are looking this as a bad signal, because they're not using the calculator. They're not leveraging their its productivity. But the teachers in the universities are against it. They are against GPT. They want people not to use it. And how do you ensure that? How do you that this technology doesn't handicap you?
Yeah, I think as a teacher, I would not say, hey, don't use ChatGPT, but I would recommend people to use ChatGPT. Then ask them to explain what's going on there. Absolutely use ChatGPT. Let GPT write code, but you have to review that code.
True.
Try to figure out what's wrong, what can I fix, what can I do better, and stuff like that, right? So I think, and another fundamental things which we talked about earlier, that we need education institutions to have practitioners teach.
True.
People who are teaching full-time for years are away from the industry. And the gap is huge, and technology is changing every single year. And by the time a person graduates, tech has already changed. What do you do? So it's really important for universities to catch up. One of the things I really, really liked about the education system in the West is there's a very smooth transition from corporate to academia and back. Right? A lot of people go back to teach. Balaji, for instance, used to take lectures at Stanford. Back in 2013 or 14, I tried to get into one of the classes, but he used to take lectures.
Wow.
My visa interview was hilarious. When I applied for visa, I had very little money. I applied for Draper University, but it was expensive. They gave me some scholarship, but it was still expensive. But I got the letter from them. I paid they said the block fee is $500. I was like, okay, I'll pay the block fee. So I paid the block fee, got the letter for visa, did not attend the university thing, but you got that letter, right? And then after getting that letter, I applied for my visa and went for the visa interview. 2 days before I went to the visa interview, they said that you probably need your bank account statement as well. And my bank account had 2,000 rupees. I was like, yaar, ye bahut hi galat time pe visa interview ho raha hai. This is way back, 2013, right? 2013, 14-ish. So I asked a friend of mine to transfer about 1.5 lakhs to my bank account. And so he did. I got a बैंक स्टेटमेंट की यार कम से कम 1.5 लाख रुपए हो, थोड़ी तो इज्जत रहे, मार के कोई नहीं भगाएगा. So I went to the visa interview and he looked at the statement. He was like, what do you do? I said, tech consulting. And he said, how much do you make? I said, whatever, $2,000 or $1,800 and 1.5 lakh rupees essentially. And I said, who do you work for and stuff like that. And so those questions, but he said that, but your bank account only has 1.5 lakhs. I was like, yeah, I started day before yesterday.
So he still approved that.
Yeah, I still got the approval. Yes. I don't know how, but that was my visa interview.
Do you think going to US changed your life, give you a different trajectory?
Yeah, I think anyone who wants to build in tech, especially in software, SaaS, or in general in tech, if you want to build something, as early as possible, just go there. Don't spend time looking at Twitter with people talking bullshit, because like the popular opinion is often like what's against the norm, right? That's what gets popular, right? Whatever is against the norm, people start talking about it, right? Here I'll tell you what I regret. I think I should have spent more time in Silicon Valley early on. I did spend 18 months type thing a couple of years ago, right? But I wish I just went there when I was 21, 22, or even younger. So what's there is whatever goes against the popular opinion usually is more talked about thing, because it's like you're challenging the status quo, right? But it is the status quo, right? If you're building in tech, the kind of support system which exists in Silicon Valley is just insane.
What's the support system that you're talking about?
What's the support? It's the ecosystem. It's the people. It's Silicon Valley acts as a suction point for people, smartest people in tech around the world, which sucks people in. Let's say it is 1/5 of what it was 10 years ago. It's still huge, right? Even if it's 1/5. I don't think it's 1/5, but it's still like, it's huge, right? And I feel that in Silicon Valley, the ecosystem, just like you build a culture of a company, the Silicon Valley culture has been built where you have to be a giver. I mean, again, it's not that you can't build a company without being in Silicon Valley. Absolutely. You can. But the kind of support system which exists there is just amazing. The amount of learnings you have, the kind of people you meet, the Friday dinners you go for, the Saturday hangouts which you do with people. It's all, you keep learning things, right? And I think that is just incredible. And I know the popular, it's again unpopular, but ये सच्चाई है यार. और Twitter पे usually whoever is challenging the status quo is more viral. But don't listen to Twitter. Just pack your bags and go to Silicon Valley. That would be my advice. And especially if you're young, and you will find suddenly there are so many people doing
crazy things.
Yeah, imagine Silicon Valley is a place where in a small place, right, in like 1 hour of drive, there has been a Mark Zuckerberg, there has been not hundreds Mark Zuckerbergs, but not at that scale, but hundreds of young people who were passionate, who got the support, and who ended up doing incredible things. You are only one of those hundreds. And all people are trying to help you, and they know what you need, because there have been so many people around there.
Walk that path.
Yeah, there is Steel Fellowship. One of the most beautiful things I was a part of was this fellowship called Interact. Absolutely beautiful. It's like a very low key, community of people.
It's still there? It's still on?
Oh yeah. Young people can apply to it every January. There's an application which opens up. And it's only there for people who are under 23.
Wow.
But
superb.
Who are the fellows? Like founder of Figma was a fellow, founder of Scale AI was a fellow. Like some incredible people, right? So I think, and I think the fact is, it's not that the founder of these people were the fellows before. Like there are a lot of fellowships which recognize successful people and then claim that they made them successful. Right? It makes no sense, right? But Interact, all of these people came in when they were known, right? Like when they were just really balls of energy in space, right? And I think it's a community which I feel doesn't judge me. I can be myself. I can be in safe space, and I'm not being judged by being more successful or not being more successful. It's just there to support you, right? And I feel that there are a lot more people, amazing people like those who you will find, and yeah, I think
18 महीने में tell us some stories, some most embarrassing stories or learnings that you had in the valley.
So not just 18 months, but I've spent time on and off, but 18 months was like a stretch. But embarrassing stories. focusing on health, right? We're never taught consciously, I mean, not a part of the curriculum, what you should eat, how you should take care of your body, how it affects your energy, how it affects work, how it affects everything, right? I learned how to take care of my body. I would eat random things, right? I would take like a big pack of hide and seek and try to like munch on that on a Saturday morning or something like that. And people would just look at me like, oh, that's sweet. You can take that and things like that. And I didn't know what it means, right? So I think as a young person, learning how to take care of your body, how to work out, how to go on bike rides or pick up some working out hobby, which really gets you going. How important is that, right? And being in that place, everybody is into it. Everybody is working out. Everybody is taking care of their body well. Everybody is sleeping well. I used to sleep 5 hours a day and I used to take pride in it.
And most founders sacrifice their health while building a company. Do you think?
Yeah, and I feel, look, they have to. Yeah, आज भी करते हैं यार लोग. This I heard, I admire Noida a lot.
70 hours a week.
And he just said that young people should work 70 hours a week for us to proceed. Like, similar thing happened in China, 996, right? Like people used to work hard and that's why they did well, right? It's beautiful things I was a part of was this fellowship called Interact. Absolutely beautiful. It's like a very low-key, community of people.
It's still there? It's still on?
Oh yeah. Young people can apply to it every January. There's an application which opens up. And it's only there for people who are under 23.
Wow.
But
super.
Who are the fellows? Like founder of Figma was a fellow. Founder of Scale AI was a fellow. Like some incredible people, right? So I think, and I think the fact is, it's not that the founder of these people were the fellows before. Like there are a lot of fellowships which recognize successful people and then claim that they made them successful. Right? It makes no sense, right? But Interact, all of these people came in when they were known, right? Like when they were just really balls of energy in space, right? And I think it's a community which I feel doesn't judge me. I can be myself. I can be in safe space, and I'm not being judged by being more successful or not being more successful. It's just there to support you, right? And I feel that there are a lot more people, amazing people like those who you will find. And yeah, I think
18 महीने में tell us some stories, some most embarrassing stories or learnings that you had in the valley.
So not just 18 months, but I've spent time on and off, but 18 months was like a stretch. But embarrassing stories, focusing on health, right? We're never taught consciously, I mean, not a part of the curriculum, what you should eat, how you should take care of your body, how it affects your energy, how it affects work, how it affects everything, right? I learned how to take care of my body. I would eat random things, right? I would take like a big pack of hide and seek and try to like munch on that on a Saturday morning or something like that. And people would just look at me like, oh, that's sweet. You can take that and things like that. And I didn't know what it means, right? So I think as a young person, learning how to take care of your body, how to work out, how to go on bike rides or pick up some working out hobby, which really gets you going. How important is that, right? And being in that place, everybody is into it. Everybody is working out. Everybody is taking care of their body well. Everybody is sleeping well. I used to sleep 5 hours a day and I used to take pride in it.
And most founders sacrifice their health while building a company. Do you think?
Yeah, and I feel, look, they have to. Yeah, आज भी करते हैं यार लोग. This I heard, I admire Noida a lot.
70 hours a week.
And he just said that young people should work 70 hours a week for us to proceed. Like, similar thing happened in China, 996, right? Like people used to work hard and that's why they did well, right? It's not like, you may have a preference that, hey, I don't want to work 70 hours a day, and that's fine. If you want a normal life and you want to work at a company and
work-life culture,
you want to maintain that balance, go do it. Or if you're incredibly smart and you feel in working a few hours, like 40-hour week, I can be ambitious and I can change the world. Good for you. Turns out most people are not that smart, and what I've observed is that smart people recognize that they're not smart enough and they work hard, right? And just understanding that is working hard is in your control, right? And I think I have worked 12, 15 hours a day for years. I've seen people aaj bhi kar rahe hain yaar, like people who are successful or they're just passionate about it. They don't have to do it. Ritesh Bhai works so much, right? Like he doesn't have to do it now, but he still does, right? There are so many other people who are just there doing it day in and day out, and I feel that doesn't get as noticed, right? But yeah, working hard is there, and you have to do it if you want to be ambitious, and there's nothing wrong with it. And of course, like there's another narrative of don't burn yourself out and stuff like that, and I agree with it. Like I don't set an alarm for myself after having those learnings. It's been 3 years. I just sleep, and my body was trained to wake up in 5 hours. So even if I wanted to sleep more, I just couldn't. And this happened when I used to live in the co-working space at Innovate. I would work late and I would go to bed, and at 7 o'clock there was one customer who would just show up. And so I had to wake up at 7, right? And he would show up every day at 7 a.m. and he would complain if I was sleeping there.
On the table.
It was like, I can't do that. So I would just wake up in 5 hours, and then my body got accustomed to waking up in 5 hours, and I just couldn't sleep. So I really struggled. I started taking melatonin support, started working out, started taking all these kind of health advice from people to really get going. Now I'm at 7 hours. I want to be at 7 hours. I want to sleep properly and stuff like that. So don't want to compromise my sleep. Want to take care of my body, want to eat healthy and stuff like that. But do I want to shy away from working 12 hours a day? Absolutely not. I would want to work more and I have nothing against people who want to work, let's say, 4-hour work week. 4 घंटे काम करना है, बिल्कुल करो यार. If you're really smart, you can be ambitious, go do it. If you feel you don't want to be ambitious, you have a happy life, you want to have a balance, good for you. Like, absolutely. But if somebody says that I'm going to work 4 hours a day and I want to make a startup happen, want to change the world, it's very
not
rare.
going to happen.
I mean, I don't know anyone, for instance, who has done that, right? So, दोनों नहीं हो सकता,
So while building Pesto and while building companies, as a founder, you can't do everything. You need to have a bandwidth. How have you learned the art of delegation? How do you ensure कि जो काम आप करते हो?
I struggle with it even today. I would not want to sound like, oh, I'm the delegation king now. It's one thing which I really want to learn even more. I'm not as good as I want to be at it, right? Learning how to delegate well is one of the hardest things to learn as a founder. And I feel I used to struggle with it probably 2-3 years ago. Now I think I've gotten better with practice. But but what I would say, learning how to delegate has nothing to do with 4-hour work week. If you think delegate करके 4 घंटे काम होगा, नहीं हो सकता. You have to, because there's an endless ocean of what you can do, right? So I feel, again, like I know where this is headed. Learn how to delegate well, and then you can be like 8-9 hours, have that balance and stuff like that. Yeah, at an early stage, नहीं possible है. आप थोड़ा later stage पे चले जाओ when you have a good team, a large team that's been built, and you have a well-oiled machine, you have PMF that's going very, really well, and stuff like that. Even then, I've seen a lot of people work hard, but I think 4-hour work week or delegation are not correlated. For founders, how important it is to learn how to delegate? Absolutely. Insanely important. One of the biggest skills to have as a founder or as a manager is to learn how to delegate well, right?
How do you delegate well? Give us some.
Learning management really well, understanding, having empathy, understanding people's strengths and what really gets them going, right? I think are the hardest parts to learn, right? Like, and then just being extremely well managed, extremely well organized, right? If you find an overlap of these two, then you probably succeed at delegation.
What are some founder skills? So people who want to become founders, what would you suggest to them? These are the skills. If you're a founder, take care of these skills, train your brain on these skills. What would those be?
I would say, so founders are less about skills. It's more about traits.
What are those traits then?
What are those traits? Those traits are, so I always say 4 H's, being happy, humble, honest, and hungry, right? I would always go back to it. I've always found that those to be like a really beautiful way to put it. being happy, humble, honest, and hungry, being disciplined. Actually, if you're not too disciplined, it's okay. but being persistent is something which goes a long way, right? And you can only be persistent when you are actually vested into a problem that you're trying to solve, right? Continuing to do something when there are opportunities to just give up is something which people need. So being persistent, which can only happen when you're attached to the problem which you're solving, goes a very long way.
How do you find a problem to which you're attached and you can stay attached for a long time?
Things that you care about, right? Things that you care about, things like a vision which you get attached to, that, okay, this makes perfect sense. For me, it was remote work. I was like, it's so obvious, but it's not the popular opinion. But it has to happen. It may take time. Like my original plan was, I thought that remote work adoption will happen by 2025 or 2027.
But
right?
COVID
accelerated it. Yes, that's good. But I wanted, or I thought that the norm would be that by 2025, 2027, remote work will become a norm, and it will largely be driven by senior talent wanting to go remote. So it will become like a talent acquisition thing. And now COVID did that. So now it's by default, and then people are coming back. But I think that a lot of people will remain remote. And of course, like remote is not like my way or highway. A lot of roles could be remote. A lot of other roles could be in person, and a mix of both, right? So I think that is something which could happen as well. But yeah, it definitely accelerated things. So I cared about that. Logically, it made all the sense to me. Income sharing agreements did as well, but not everything is ideal. That's the learning I had. But yeah, I think that's something which I felt attached to. I think like if a lot of people, Pesto has actually enabled north of $20 million, probably $25 million of capital that has come into the Indian ecosystem from outside, right? And I feel that's a good impact, lower scale, but decent impact. If I'm able to make this 25 million, 2 billion, I think the impact which we can create on the Indian economy could be huge, right? And same is true for other economies, right? Like there is talent in Brazil, there is talent in Nigeria, there's talent in East Europe, there is talent in Philippines, right? What if we are able to give a platform to people where they can come in and find opportunities? There are 700,000 open job positions in the US. Not right now, probably. It's a study from a couple of years back. 7 lakh open job positions in the US, software engineering, which people are unable to fill. So there is definitely a lack of demand supply gap, right? And there is so much supply in all of these countries. And I feel that it just logically makes sense, right? Now we have to go make it happen. So
what's the next big thing for Pesto? Where do you want to take this company? Because you have changed your business model a couple of times, right? From income sharing agreements to charging from the clients. What's the next big thing? Where do you want to shift this?
So I think something that has really worked for us, very recently we opened the platform to everyone with the same insights that senior engineers are not coming to study, right? Junior engineers are, and we believe that the junior engineers that study from us will get there, but they will probably take 2 years, right? 2 years, 3 years to really get the most out of Pesto, right? And I feel that senior engineers are coming to the platform, so we are just opening up the platform to everybody. AI is an interesting shift for us, right? When we started using AI, everything is starting to make sense.
How?
All these software engineers are coming to the platform. We are able to vet them using AI. We are able to categorize them in different buckets based on their strengths. And we are able to use all of this data to then match them to companies where they're a perfect fit. And companies are loving it because they don't have to interview tens of people or people to, hire one. So their hiring cycle is going from 3 months to 20 days, 25 days, and something like that, right? Interviews are being scheduled on the spot, right? And things of that nature. So we've opened up the platform to all engineers. A lot of senior software engineers are coming into Pesto. A lot of and probably scale it.
how do you use AI into segmenting? Can you go deeper and help us understand how are you using AI to segregate these software engineers into buckets?
Yeah.
How does it work?
So basically, there are different steps to it. Number one is they go through an automated test, which is an elimination round. A lot of people pass that round. Let's say it's like a normal test which everybody does. Then we give them a take-home assignment. We ask them to create a snake game or to create some other thing, right? Sometimes we give them Figma designs as well. Sometimes we don't, but they have to work on that project, create that project, invest 4 or 5 hours in it, and then submit the repo, GitHub repo where they have pushed this, right? Then we use AI to analyze that code base, right? And we are also building something where they are required to give a demo, record a Loom video, and we are building analytics on top of that Loom video, which kind of gives us insights about how well they have executed it, and also gives us insights about their communication skills and language.
And where are they making mistake in the code?
Exactly. Right. And based on that, just that, we are able to go deep into things because we have a large base of developers who have given this assignment, and we have trained our model based on all of these tests, right? So I think that is working really well. And then the people who get shortlisted go through an in-person interview, which we are currently working on automating because you can't scale human interviews, right? So right now they go through that human interview, but eventually I think in another month or two, we will probably automate that as well.
Wow.
So all of these data points, we are then able to feed into our system, and then companies come in, they just share a job description. And we also have a chat box where they're able to talk to the platform, right? You're being shown a bunch of profiles. You're like, hey, I need somebody more senior. Can you find me somebody who has worked on Electron.js, somebody who has worked on XYZ, right? And then you can just interview on the spot, right?
What are some other technologies that you love and which you think are going to change the world and which are not so well-known like ChatGPT, AI, and...
Yeah, I think AI has been around for quite some time, right? A lot of it became mainstream with of course, OpenAI releasing ChatGPT, and I feel so. I still feel that there's a lot that happened which hasn't been released in the AI world because it's as a company you're also trying to control a lot of things, right? Like what went wrong with Facebook was Cambridge Analytica, right? It wasn't intentional; it just happened, right? We probably will have a moment like that in AI as well, a problem which we haven't thought of, right? I think a Google or a OpenAI or companies like those are trying to avoid that problem. So they're releasing whatever they've built in last few years in phases, right? So that's one. So AI has been around, and a lot has happened in AI. I think while most of us were distracted by Web3 or random things.
Crypto,
a lot of work was happening in AI. DeepMind used to be like the North Star, and of course, like OpenAI ended up changing the game and stuff like that, right? There's a lot of work which is happening in nuclear fusion technology right now, right? That we may get energy independence if nuclear fusion becomes a thing. India has a lot of thorium reserves, big advantage for us if we are able to do that using that. There's a lot of work happening in that. There's a lot of work happening in space tech, right? There's a lot of work happening in nano technology, right? So I think those are pretty. Biotech is quite exciting. There's a lot of work happening in that. So I think that all of these places, there's a lot of research that's ongoing, and hopefully we are able to see results in the next 5-10 years as well. That's the cycle, and those are the things I'm excited about, especially energy. I think there's something big that's going to happen in energy, right? Because dependency on oil, especially with geopolitics, like it's even more like pushing more and more people to do more research. Like nuclear was doing so well, but then because of this narrative that reactors were shut down and nuclear energy became unpopular with time, right? But it was actually on a very good trend some 30 years ago, right? I think as we are diversifying, going towards green energy, green hydrogen, insane, right? Like Nitin Gadkari's car and stuff. It's phenomenal work happening in that direction. So I think there's something really amazing that's probably going to happen in energy segment in next 10 years or so. So that's like one thing I'm looking forward to as well.
There is this technology Web 3, which has a lot of misunderstanding among young folks. Can you debunk this for us?
So basically, it's a new technology. It's very exciting, but at the same time, it also has wrong incentive structures, very early stages of being regulated, and stuff like that, right? So a lot of good projects will happen, a lot of bad projects will happen as well, right? Now, when I try to understand the technology a lot better, logically, it makes a lot of sense, right? For example, the whole argument that power should be decentralized so that very few people don't hold that power, it's too risky and stuff like that. And similar arguments are given for a lot of technologies to decentralize things, right? But here's the thing. In some cases, decentralization helps, right? But I think in the last 3 to 5 years, we have been overdoing it. We have been decentralizing things. In an ideal state, it makes sense, right? But in an ideal state, I can tell you that McDonald's should not exist as a business.
Why?
It's unhealthy. Do you know how many people die out of heart attack? Do you know how many people are obese in the US?
A lot, yeah.
It's not good. We need a healthy McDonald's alternative. But guess what? McDonald's is tens of billions of dollars company. Why is that? Because people love it. It's just hard. It's quick food. It's tasty and it's on the go. So the ideal state, even though it makes sense, the transition to it, if you told me that McDonald's won't exist as a business in the next 50 years or next 10 years, 50 kuch bhi ho sakta hai, next 10 years at least, I won't, if you're building a business which is built on the premise of McDonald's not existing as a business, I'll be like, that's stupid, right? There's no way that could happen, right? So I think similarly, I think in the Web3 world, we are also decentralizing things which are actually better off being centralized. In an ideal state, it would make sense, but the friction to get there is going to be very high.
What are these things? Can you give examples?
Yeah, for example, DAOs, right? Like you make every single decision in a decentralized manner. There is voting to make every decision and things like that. But what it also does is that it makes it so slow for you to run the company. If you have to make a decision now, you have to wait for everybody to come to consensus, right? It just cannot work. You need faster decision making, right? And things like that. There is a number of things, right? So I think Web3 has that one fundamental resistance flaw, and where in an ideal state, if it works, it'll be great, of course, but it's really hard to make that transition, right?
So I'm in my next summer, I'm shooing away my internship, and I want to go to the valley. Spend, let's say, 30, 40, 50, 60 days, 2 months over there. Getting in ideas for me to what should I build next? Soaking in the energy, learning from people. How should I go about it? And give me some advice to do that.
I think number one is, you said I'm going to get rid of my internship. Maybe you do an internship there, right? The second thing is that the questions which you will ask, here's the thing which, I had a lot of questions when I first went to the valley, and then I realized my questions changed. Your worldview is based on all the learnings that you have had till now. The moment you expand your worldview, you meet people from different, places, different perspective. They basically change your worldview. And when your worldview is changed, when you're thinking about things in a different manner, your questions change, right? So it's extremely difficult for me to tell you what you should be asking. Instead, I'm telling you, just go there, change your worldview, evolve your worldview, and once you evolve your worldview, you will basically be on your way.
Wow. Tell me something, some logistical challenges which you had, which you figured out a way around. Because
if you are a founder and you're unable to manage logistics, believe me,
get it.
So any logistical challenge, maybe I went through so many of these challenges that I'm not worried about anything today. But I feel that all of these I actually went through the extreme end of it, right? I highly recommend people to not be broke and travel. but I think you'll figure it out. I'm pretty confident.
Super. Here we come to the last rapid fire round. ask you a bunch of
Nice.
exciting
You're
questions.
Karan Johar now?
No, but this will probably help a lot of folks. So tell us some problem
Yes.
that you are facing, but you don't have bandwidth to solve that problem. So this is where our viewers will pick up certain things that they can solve for.
Interesting. So you're talking about as a company, if you had to build, what you would build?
I'm talking about, there are always challenges into our life, into one's life, which he wants to solve, which he is excited for
यार ये ना
solving.
approach ही गलत है. See, I know that's the narrative, right? कि यार ये problem face कर रहे हैं, इसका हम solution. This is the first principles thinking, and it's great, and we should all have it, and blah blah blah. But if you're a founder, first time founder, no access to capital, build something which is safer. Take safe bets.
Okay, got it.
Because learning how to build a business, the same thing I would come back to, that don't try to solve a problem from first principles. Go look what's already working. Go, if you want to build a small projects, be an indie maker, go to acquire.com. See what projects are selling well. You know, if those projects are doing good in terms of revenue and selling well, look at what bootstrap companies are doing well and stuff like that. Then basically build something, take a data-driven approach to it, not based on my opinion or anyone's opinion, right? And that will probably give you much better insights to work on, right? Go talk to investors, right? Investors are smart. You know, like people are like, hey, if you're building Uber for India or X for India or Y for India or Z for India, you get funded well. कभी किसी ने ये पूछा है क्यों? कुछ तो कारण होगा, right?
Because it's a proven model.
Yeah, proven model है. There are downsides to it as well. Downsides ये है कि if something worked in the Western market, may not work in the Indian market because the economics are different, market is different,
mindset is different.
There are a lot of very India first problems as well which you can solve. Like AstroTalk is in the news these days, right? Phenomenal astrology specific company doing 600 crores in revenue.
It's crazy.
It's crazy, right? So I think there are those problems as well. But I'm talking about a very specific segment. If you're building a software company for the Western market, because that market is completely, built already and it's nice, it's a good market to operate in, you have arbitrage and all that. If you're building for that market, don't think from first principles.
Got it.
At least identify the markets based on where the money is moving. If there are large cap, publicly listed companies in a segment, that segment probably has a lot of money. Right? If there is a sales force, there's a reason behind the sales force. Look at those reasons. Look at what other companies exist in that segment, right? Look at all of those things, right? That really gives you insights about what markets exist. Creating a market sounds great. I would love to do that someday. Not today. Right?
Got it.
As a first-time founder, I think you have to be incredibly lucky. And I feel like all founders get lucky. I feel I got lucky a bunch of times. I'm waiting to get lucky more often. But you put yourself in positions where you get lucky, right?
How do you do that? And what were the times when you felt lucky?
By increasing the probability. What are the times? I do so many cold outreach to so many people.
I know.
I got lucky when I approached Balaji asking for advice and he agreed. I got lucky when I approached Ritesh Bhai at that co-working space and I was like, I got lucky when I, just pinged somebody for some advice or for some help and they just did that right out of the blue, right? So I think you get lucky all the time. And I feel like as a company, if you want to get lucky, as a founder, you want the company to get lucky, you basically position the company in such a manner where you overlap with the market expanding, right? And that's something which can be done in a very scientific manner, right? So you can't you can actually manufacture luck by increasing the probability for you to get lucky, right? So everybody is like, like this person got lucky, this market was expanding and it was at the right place at the right time. Yeah, but that person has been putting in 12, 15 hours a day for years on different things to be in that position, right? So that is what happens, right? So manufacture luck.
Wow. What's some good movie or a series that you have watched lately which has inspired you or you have enjoyed the most?
Interesting. Yeah, movie though, I always go back to Whiplash. I somehow connect with that movie a lot. I told you
Energy balls.
I was a ball of energy back then, and that I connected with that movie a lot. Recently, I saw this series on Netflix, Playlist, the Spotify story, right? Incredible. I love that. I love that as well. It was pretty cool.
Tell us some books that has inspired you.
Oh, and actually, I want to recommend a podcast as well.
Yeah.
Go watch the Bloom podcast.
Okay, sure.
It's, I've been a big fan of Masters of Scale and a lot of Western podcasts which do well. But I think Bloom podcast, talking about leaders, one of my personal favorites is this podcast by Manish Sabharwal, founder of Teenies. Like probably one of the best podcasts I've heard in a while. So much learning. I've heard that thrice now, right? It's completely focused on power of compounding. And I feel that is something which every founder should have, right? So listening to Bloom podcast. Bloom is actually a venture capital firm as well. But Karthik is amazing. But the podcast they have come up with I love that.
Wow. And I believe it's a second season right now.
I think it's the second season. I haven't heard the first season actually. I'm catching up. But the second season I heard, and it's pretty mind-blowing.
Tell us some books that have changed your life. And caveat is that you don't have to repeat the books that you did on Raj and Ranveer's podcast. So yeah.
मेरे को याद नहीं है यार which books
you recommended Make Your Bed, Venture Deals, Hard Things About Hard Things.
Nice.
So you have to tell some books apart from these ones.
Got it. That's a good one. I think like one of the books I read recently, I think I read it. Okay, actually this one, On Writing Well is pretty cool.
On Writing Well.
Yeah. It's really nice. If you want to learn, I think in today's world, being a great writer goes without saying. You have to be a great writer, right? If you're in a job, if you're a founder, if you're whatever, being a great writer goes a long way, right? So this one is one. The second book, which I think has been pretty interesting read is by one of my friends actually, Mirial. He wrote a book called Indistractable. Amazing book. I feel, I not just read it, I applied it, right? Like, and there is no notification which can ring on my phone right now. And I can't tell you how liberating it is. It's amazing. As a founder, you keep getting emails, you keep getting WhatsApp, and you're like, hey, I have to be on the go. And I used to fail at it anyways. I would be terrible at emails, right? and stuff like that. Now I just have an hour blocked on my calendar thrice in a day.
I have to see the mail only at that time.
Only at the time. And I just and of course, whenever you're free, you can always go back to it. But when I'm talking to you, I'm really talking to you, right? And I feel that this is something which really affected me, not just in work, but also in my personal life. When I'm talking to my wife or my parents or somebody else, there's something coming up and they're like, are you doing something else? Are you listening to me? And this used to happen so often, and I know a lot of people will connect with it, right? You're like, huh? Kya bola? What happened, right? Imagine how terrible it is. You missed a moment. With your family or with whatever, or if you're working, you're not listening to the other person. You're hearing them, but not completely listening to them. And I think that Indistractable was just amazing. Like it's and I feel like Hooked was how to get people hooked, but Indistractable is the reverse of it. But I think there are concepts like planting a tree. I downloaded that Forest app, and I think like the temptation of opening any of the social apps, Forest app has been working well, and I don't spend time in social apps when I'm planting trees. I feel hurt that, okay, it really works, right? And I think that's like one of the books which is not just amazing, it also has some advice which is incredibly actionable, irrespective of who you are, founder, not founder, working somewhere, internship, whatever. Just read that book. It's really, really amazing, right? So that's a very good recommendation. I feel people will get value from, right? The third one, I think I would want to recommend something related to health. I think there's one, Hacking Health by Mukesh Bansal, which I read some time back, which was interesting, pretty nice. And another one, Why We Sleep. Actually, I used to be so, again, that
sleep deprived always.
Young Ayush, ball of energy. I used to say things like,
I'll work 25 hours.
I want to solve sleep someday.
Okay, okay.
Like, why do humans need to sleep 8 hours a day, right? Like, there must be, we are a big bag of chemicals. There must be a way to
remove the sleep
to treat these chemicals. And I still feel that there could be a way, right? And I would love to pursue that idea someday. But I hated sleeping so much that why do we have unproductive 7-8 hours? I understand that. I want to sleep 7-8 hours because it really helps me get back into the right frame of mind and have this energy, right? But why do we need to sleep 7 hours to do that? Like, we have solved a lot of problems. We have pills which solves a lot of problems. Why can't we solve sleep? So someday I at least want to do some research on that. Whenever I have the resources to do so. I think sleep is why we sleep is something which, unless sleep gets solved, somebody solves sleep. But read that book; it will convince you to sleep well. Don't burn your neurons. Don't screw up your chemicals. Sleeping well is really, really important, right? Another actually. It's actually nothing related to the book, but we were talking about industries which we were excited about.
Yes.
Longevity is an industry I'm incredibly excited about, right? Laura Demings is somebody I know is pretty amazing, runs a fund where she's trying to solve aging, right? And I feel that you and I are actually going to live more than 100 years. More than 120 years probably, right? It will get solved. Next 20, 30 years, it will get solved. And why do I have this confidence? There's a company which has already solved it for dogs. So there's a dog food which exists today. If you feed that to your dog, dogs that live 10 years now live 20 years.
Wow.
If it can be done with dogs, it can probably be done with humans as well. So I think that's something which I'm incredibly excited about, longevity. And of course, like, this is something which this space will never be short of capital. Every rich person does not want to die. So I think that's an interesting industry.
I've seen some couple of billionaires who are, preserving their body. So in case some innovation comes which can...
There are crazy people. I know somebody who was talking about this person. I think I met somebody last week who was talking about this person who was changing his blood every month completely. So there are a lot of people who are doing things in longevity space. This space sounded absurd 10 years ago. It doesn't sound absurd now. People have done things in it, and there's a lot of research going on. But yeah, this is just an interesting space to be in.
Wow.
Yeah.
Celeb, tell us some of the best travel destination that you love to travel to that place.
I have like a soft corner for Hong Kong.
Okay, why?
Because that was the first place I went to. I went there with literally no money and no ticket to this conference I was attending, and I made friends there. Suddenly one of the speakers was a good friend of mine, and started staying with a friend there and stuff like that, and went there every year. So attached to Hong Kong, a lot of my friends come together. I hope Rise comes back. Rise hasn't been happening. It's a conference which happens in summer every year, but hasn't been happening for quite a few years. But we all used to get together there, and I just feel connected to that city. It was my first, city, place outside India. And Singapore is something which I really, really love. I recently went there. It's pretty amazing. And then Silicon Valley, of course, because I'm in love with that place. SF is horrible. You may die there, but the fact that people are still living there, despite this risk, is just insane.
Why can someone die there?
SF has a big homeless street people crime problem, right? Like a lot of criminals, a lot of theft happening, murders happening. One of the founders was murdered there some time back. It's like some sort of political situation because of which there's a lot of crime on the streets. So SF is incredibly unsafe, probably the unsafest place I know on earth where I've been to. But I preferred staying in the South Bay.
Okay.
A lot of people stay in SF as well. There are safer places. If you know the streets, you can live in SF as well. But it's really sad, the state of SF right now, but I hope it gets better.
How did you meet the most important person in your life?
Interesting. I would say most important person in my life would be my wife.
Okay.
We were classmates. Yeah, that's how we met.
In school days?
We were classmates in school days. We were not friends in school days, but we started dating, of course, when she was in college.
But you left your college, no?
Yeah, I went to her college. It's a funny story. She was in Miranda House, but I ended up building a software to sell to Miranda House. Yeah. So I used to spend a lot of time in Miranda House, despite it being a women's college.
What's the next big thing on your bucket list?
Yeah, next big thing for me is really building this platform, Pesto, into a platform. I think we have seen signs of PMF, and I feel that there's good output coming to it. Of course, the market is terrible. We are probably in the worst recruitment market ever, which also makes it the best time to be building and solving problems, so that when the market comes back, we'll have that advantage. So yeah, I think I'm really excited to take this product which we have built to a lot more customers. Really enjoying enterprise sales because a lot of people are able to see the value. One good sign is that a lot of these customers that I'm pitching to sell our product are also considering joining Pesto full time.
Wow, that's the best sign.
It's probably the best sign, and I'm really excited about these signs. But yeah, I think I really want to make sure that we make sure the mission we set out on, we make sure we do justice to it.
Actionable hack for someone to go to a country with zero money and to enter into a conference without its ticket.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I don't have an answer to it. Look, when I went there, I had no idea how to get to the venue from the airport, right? I was calculating the amount of money I had. Probably had $100 or something like that. But when I went there, I always had friends. So I had this rule that every week I will talk to 2 people from the global ecosystem, and I just enjoyed doing that. And this was no agenda call, right? And whenever I would do calls, I would ask them for a couple of people who I should speak with, what value I can add to them, and I tried to do things to add value to them and things like that. So I had friends, and I pinged a few of my friends who helped out. So I think you'll be surprised of how amazing the startup ecosystem is, how many people would want to help you. Some of them may not have bandwidth to help you, but the intent will exist in 100% of them, because people who have been successful are always humble, because either your business survives or your ego does. If you're building a business. So most people who are successful will be humble. And the second thing is, they want to help you because somebody helped them. And it's the most beautiful part about the ecosystem, right? So you'll be surprised of how many people who want to help you. If you come from the right place with the right ask, just reach out to people. Reach out to people, make it easy for them to help you. And yes, don't feel upset if some of them can't help you. Majority of them won't be able to help you, but you just have to reach out to a lot of people. Do cold outbounds, reach out to people with thoughtful messages, and you'll be surprised of.
What are these thoughtful messages, and how I can help someone in the right direction to help ourselves?
Yeah, it's not quid pro quo. That's the thing, right? Like you always think that I need to scratch your back for you to scratch mine. No, it's not how it works. I mean, I have reached out to some people. I don't want to name drop people, but I've reached out to some amazing people who I admired, wrote a cold email. And I was like, I don't know what I can do for you right now, but someday I'll figure it out. Just saying that, it's okay. They know you can't help them, but they probably want to help you not to get anything from you, but just because they feel that they want to help you, right? Like somebody helped them. They just want to pass it on. One very memorable thing which I remember is I emailed, for example, Professor Clayton Christensen. I was very young. I read his book, Innovator's Dilemma, and I was curious about economics and started studying economics and wanted to do some more research, go deeper and stuff like that. And I just cold emailed him, told him what I was studying, what are the doubts I had, what I wanted to study more, and things of that nature. And he connected me to somebody on his team. He recommended them with whatever books. He shipped me a book. he shared like PDF of a bunch of different things I should read. And he also said that he may not have bandwidth to do more, but he did this, and I was like so grateful. He's not with us anymore, but the amount of respect I have for him is just incredible, right? Like, it was a very simple ask. I went in with a very simple ask, and he thought I deserve his help, and
he pushed.
He helped, right? So I think just being out there, shooting your shot is very important. If you don't shoot your shot, everybody is like, oh, you got lucky, cold email. Yes, majority of most of the beautiful things happen with cold emails, right? But you won't get lucky unless you shoot your shot, right? There is one person who is like complaining about life. He's like, oh, this person got lucky. Somebody responded to a cold email, or he got to the right place at the right time. Of course, he got lucky. But he or she emailed 100 people with thoughtful messages, and one out of those 100 worked out, right? So you've got to hustle, right? You've got to make things happen. They won't, come to you. And that's the thing which really differentiates people, right? That hustle. I have like a label in my mailbox. A lot of people who reach out to me are very young and are amazing people who I would want to help, but I just get, I'm so much into things that maybe I'm not in a position to help, right? So what I do is I either ship them books, or I have a label in my mailbox. That label is called the Funny Academy.
Okay.
And I just mark all these emails in those labels, right? Because I just want to, curate these people, because I know all of these people will end up doing incredible things with time. And I'm just so confident about it, irrespective of me helping them or not, right? They will do incredible things because they have that hustle, right? So I think that's something which everybody should do.
Thanks a lot. It has been super insightful. Thanks a lot for being generous with your time and not...
Thank you for taking out time and coming all the way.
I had to. You were so charismatic when we met first time. And again, this is very serendipitous that Ritesh sir connected us. The insights, उस दिन जब आप BCG में talk दे रहे थे, मेरे को talk में रहना था, लेकिन नीचे से किसी का कॉल आ गया कि वो आपकी गाड़ी का वो कोई आ रहा है, तो आ गया, तो फिर आई हैड टू गो डाउन एंड आई रिग्रेटेड कि मैं आपके टॉक में नहीं रहा पाया. और फिर मेरे को बाहर किसी ने बुला लिया हमने कि बच्चों को आगे लेके जाना है, तो आगे कैसे लेके जाओगे, बिकॉज वी वर गोइंग टू नेस्ले. उसके बाद आई वाज गेटिंग कांस्टेंट कॉल्स एंड आई वाज लाइक कि भाई मेरे को अटेंड करने दो, लेकिन वो नहीं हो पाया. एंड फाइनली अ सक्सेस. एंड होपफुली दिस विल बी सुपर इंसाइटफुल. अगर एक या दो बच्चों ने भी एक या दो कोल्ड ईमेल लिख के भी कुछ हासिल कर लिया, तो आई बिलीव वी हैव डन आवर जॉब सक्सेसफुली.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
And super grateful. I hope to add value in whatever way possible. Again, I don't know how, but anytime we'll figure that out.